Hi, we will be going through Chapter 3, Crisis and Risk Management in Tourism and Hospitality Industry. This chapter will tackle the following topics: hazards, identification of nature of impending risks, use of safety devices, risk reduction and transfers, principles of adhesion and risk communication, guest behavior, staffing and branding, and best practices for hotel consumer service and recovery. Last is liability of hotel and personal injury claims. The objectives of this chapter are: first, to discuss about the hazards involving the tourism and hospitality industry, to discuss the different usage of safety devices and the ways in which to reduce risks for the industry, to discuss the principles, definitions, and practices related in managing risks in the tourism and hospitality industry, and last, to provide a general idea on how to recognize risks and provide solutions in the tourism and hospitality industry.
I'm Alexis, and I'll be going to discuss technological hazards. So, technology is considered beneficial to the tourism industry. However, could produce negative impact to the industry as a whole if not utilized correctly and with necessary discipline. So, the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, or UNISDR, has defined technological hazards as one stemming from technological or industrial condition. So, technological hazard includes accident, dangerous procedures, infrastructure deficiencies, specific human activities that can cause death, injury, disease, other health impacts, as well as jeopardize property. So, technological hazards examples are industrial pollution, nuclear radiation, toxic waste, dam failures, transport accidents, factory explosions, and fire spills. So one of the good examples here is one of the famous destination here in the Philippines. It's the island of Boracay, which experienced water pollution. So the next topic will be the biological hazards. So another special consideration in identifying risk is the biological hazard, which pertains to biological substances that stands a danger to the health of the living organisms, chiefly humans. So biological hazard is also known biohazards. Biohazards are risk factors that could directly affect the tourism industry. So it includes substances prejudicial to other animals, samples of microorganisms, virus, or toxins that can affect the health of humans. Example for this is the H1N1, or what we call swine flu. So when compared to the regular flu, swine flu can cause more severe problems like pneumonia, lung infection, and other breathing problems. To sum it up, these hazards can affect the tourism industry in a negative way. To avoid these hazards, the management must do something.
Good day, everyone. My name is Letal Arang, and my discussion is all about factors and identification of nature of impending risk. The degree of the severity of impending risk could be determined by taking into consideration by this following. First is the reason for the happening of the risk, the frequency of occurrence of the risk, duration of the risk, speed of onset, scope and impact, potentialities to destroy, criteria for determining the necessity of the risk treatment. Inherent risk is referring to a exposure arising from a specific risk before an action is to take made by a risk manager. Residual risk is a exposure arising from a specific risk after risk manager has made any, and in case such action has proven useful. The risk manager must evaluate the risk impact based on criteria given by his or her organization. The following issues must be addressed well in the risk identification. First is the the cost of the event, area of impact, enablers, events, and potentials of consequences. The event or occurrence of a particular set of situation could be a perfect proof that another event attaching potential risk must be addressed accordingly to avoid harm or prejudice to people. The anticipation of the potential consequences is also important in the risk management so as not to be left confused on actual occurrence of the uncertainty. The determination of enablers is also of paramount significance in identifying a proper solution to the problem, as it would point out the factors that could help the occurrence of the risk event. Use of safety device. It must be noted that tourists are feeling a great sense of safety and security through specific physical and behavioral devices such as the default lock, closed circuit TV cameras, door viewports, and closing screening by telephone operator, lock side entrance in the hotel, routine visit to the hotel by the police. The University of Western Australia has enumerated the different types of personal protective equipment that may be used as a precautionary device against the risk. First is the respiratory protection, the eyes protection, hearing protection, head protection, foot protection, head protection, and working from heights and skin protection. Knowing the cause of the reason behind the happening of an event is essential because it will be easier for the risk manager to give proper solution if she could be able to understand the situation fully. Determination of areas of impact risk is vital for the risk manager to give proper solution if he or she could determine which are or what part needs immediate action from the management.
Hi, I'm Erica and I will be discussing about risk reduction. Risk reduction refers to the reduction of risk through minimizing either the likelihood and consequence of a specific risk through the implementation of precautionary measures, risk controls, or treatments. The exercise of risk reduction may consider any of the following: 1. Observance of the safety standards. 2. Use of safety devices. 3. Earthquake-proof building or proper waste management system. And lastly, qualification requirements. Observance of the safety standards. The tourist accommodation providers are duty-bound to assure the health and safety of the guests while they are on their premises. These said obligations extend not only to guests, but as well as to the staff and anyone on the premises. Cases of negligence would amount to both criminal and civil liabilities under the law. Precautionary measures may include but not limited to the following: removal of risks and obstructions that may cause the slipping, tripping, and falling of the guests, such as faulty electrical wiring, clutter on stairs, wet floor. Next, assurance of the fitness of the furnishings for guest accommodations, making sure that the appliances are safe to use, giving orientation to the guests about the emergency procedures, attendance at all needs of the guests such as PWD, children, and VIPs. There are different government regulations that the business owners of the establishment related to tourism must comply with as part of its initiative to assure health and safety to guests. It includes but not limited to the following: Fire Code of the Philippines and Sanitation Code. Different establishments connected with tourism industry are prone to the risk of fire. To mitigate the loss of life and property, the management must comply with standards set by the Fire Code of the Philippines. Some salient points that should be understood: the code concerning risk management is as follows. 1. Sprinkler system in commercial buildings. 2. There must be fire alarm system. 3. Firewalls to separate adjoining buildings. 4. Termination of all exits in all area, affording safe passage to a public waste or safe disposal area. Next, fire exit plan for every floor showing the routes from each room to appropriate exits. 6. Self-enclosing fire doors are loading to corridors. Next, roof vents, correctly marked and lighted exit signages. Next, I will be talking about sanitation. And sanitation is another vital area that needs attention in the field of tourism, considering the proliferation of restaurants and hotels where tourism industry is. There must be proper preparation and handling of food to assure the safety and health of the guests who are availing the services of the industry to pamper themselves. Under the Sanitation Code of the Philippines, Section 3A emphasized the need to secure a sanitary permit, which is a condition sine qua non to start operation and food establishment. The structural requirements for business establishments were stipulated under Section 3E of the same code as well. Also, sanitary facilities requirements are also imposed on toilet facilities, wash hand basins, sewage disposal and drainage, refuse collection, separation, storage and disposal, and water supply. Proper storage of goods was also underscored in the code as requiring establishment to keep perishable goods refrigerated at 7 Celsius and 4 degrees Celsius when such foods are to be stored for extended periods. According to the code, fruits and vegetables shall be stored in cold rooms. Next, use of safety devices. Millman, Jones, and Beckman, 1999, have conducted an empirical study about the impact of security devices on overall feelings of Central Florida tourists while on vacation. Tourists are feeling a greater sense of safety and security through specific physical and behavioral devices, such as deadbolts lock, closed circuit, TV cameras, door viewpoints, color screening by telephone operators, lock side entrances in the hotel, and routine visits to the hotel by police. Rita Chua, 2011, has concluded in her study to maintain the classic rule of thumb that the stringent safety measures frighten tourists. Further, tourists and find an appropriate balance in the extent of overt safety measure as not as to exceed the acceptable safety threshold of tourists. The University of Western Australia has enumerated the different types of personal protective equipment that may be used as a precautionary device against risk. 1. Respiratory protection, such as disposable, cartridge, airline, half or full face. 2. Eye protection, such as spectacles, goggle, shields, visors. 3. Hearing protection, such as earmuffs and plugs. Next, hand protection, such as gloves and barrier creams. Next, foot protection, such as shoes or boots. Next, head protection, such as helmets, caps, hoods, or hats. Next, working from heights, harness and full arrest devices. Next, skin protection, such as hats, sunburn creams, long sleeve clothes, and other personal protective equipment. It may include personal protective equipment for specific tasks, with disposable clothing for working with chemicals, radiation hazards, welding, and painting. It may also include lead aprons for X-ray protection, sleeve protectors, aprons, coveralls when using chemicals, leather jackets, trousers, and spats for welding, thermal and cold protective clothing for work near furnaces and cold rooms. Lastly, Bourgeois 2016 has made some discussions on the guidelines for the safe use of equipment in hotel industry. She emphasized the importance of the following: smoke detectors, fire extinguishers, sprinkler systems, CCTV cameras, carbon monoxide detectors, danger and safety instruction signs. To sum it up, Risk reduction is a risk management technique that involves reducing the financial consequences of a loss.
Hi, I'm Shady, and I will be talking about risk transfer. There is risk transfer when the burden is being shifted from one party to another, from individuals to another individuals, from individuals to an insurance company, or from insurer to reinsurer. So according to the website of CNA, risk transfer involves the contractual shifting of a real risk from one party to another. According to Dorfman, risk transfer is an instance when an original party exposed to a loss can obtain a substitute party to bear the risk. Risk transfer may be accomplished through any of the following. First, outsourcing. Second, derivatives. Third, contracts. And fourth, insurance. First is outsourcing. So outsourcing is a process which commonly transfers a variety of risks to a partner. To give meaning to this, a contract is necessary between the management and the provider. According to Macmillan, outsourcing is a transfer of business activity from customer to a third-party service provider. So the common outsourced activities are IT services, delivery, logistics and distribution services, human resources services, sales and marketing services, procurement services, customer call center services, and finance and accounting services. So a perfect arrangement of outsourcing would be more beneficial because of efficient allocation of the roles and responsibilities. Outsourcing could be both advantages and disadvantages into the industry of tourism and hospitality. These advantages are increase of the industry efficiency. Outsourcing may be considered as a cost-saving measure in tourism and hospitality industry as it can help one release his capital for investment in some other areas of business. Access of capabilities and facilities not accessible or affordable to the management is possible through the adoption of system of outsourcing. Next, outsourcing can also help one leverage knowledge and skills along with the complete supply chain. And last, can help make business more flexible and agile, able to changing market and conditions and challenges while providing cost savings and services level improvements. While the disadvantages are the outsourcing may sometimes cause the service delivery fall behind time or fall below the expectation of the leading business. Second, confidentiality and security issues may also be at risk considering the legal control the leading business to the service provider. Third, contract between the primary business and the provider could be too rigid to accommodate adjustments or change based on the current needs. Fourth, changing of outsourcing company from time to time would also lead a friction or management difficulties. And last, outsourcing company may not be that stable to accommodate all the needs of the leading business. Second method of risk transfer is derivatives. So derivatives are tools that can enable banks and other financial institutions to break down risk into smaller elements. These elements can be bought or sold aligned with the risk management objectives. So, the original purpose was to hedge and spread risk. Third method is contractual risk transfer. Risk transfer may also be in a form of non-insurance agreements like contracts. Such agreement would dictate how penalty and indemnification are to be effectuated by the parties in case of breach. It is mechanism that accomplishes the goals of risk financing and risk control. It allows upper tier or upstream contractor to tap into the finance of lower tier or downstream party. The lower tier can finance that requirement of the contract in two ways. First, they can pay some of all costs out of their pocket from savings or other accounts. Second, they can purchase an insurance policy to finance the part of the contractually agreed risk. So both methods come into play where contractual risk transfer allows the upper tier to provide the activities that could lead to injury to another party and make the party liable to the result. So in other words, contractual risk transfer allows to transfer the burden to others. And lastly, risk transfer may be accomplished through insurance. So insurance is an arrangement in which you pay money to a company and they pay money to you if something unpleasant happens to you. Contract of insurance is an agreement whereby one undertakes for a consideration to indemnify another against loss, damage, or liability arising from an unknown or contingent event. There are some principles applying to insurance contracts. First, principle of indemnity provides compensation for the losses on the part of the insured. This principle should not be confused with the payment, as the insured should not profit from the insurance transaction, which there are three exceptions to the principle of indemnity: the life insurance, replacement cost insurance, and value insurance. Life insurance is not a contract of indemnity because the value of life cannot be measured before death. Replacement of cost insurance is written when the insurer promises to pay an amount equal to the full cost of repairing or replacing the property without deduction for the depreciation. And last, valued insurance pay the limit of liability whenever the insurer total loss occurred. Second principle applying to contracts is principle of insurable interest. Insurable interest is defined as the reasonable concern of a person to obtain insurance for any individual or property against unforeseen events such as death, losses, and others. There is insurable interest when an insured derives benefit from the continuous existence without impairment or damage of the insured object. Property insurance, which protects against most risks to property, it is essential to show legally recognized from ownership like title, deed, or other demonstrable financial interest. Insurance of life is essential that the policy owner could show a recognized interest in having the insured's life continue. The interest must be shown at the time of purchase of policy. So third principle of limiting recovery to the actual cash values. Actual cash value is the amount equal to the replacement cost minus depreciation of a damages or stolen property at the time of loss. It is actual value for which the property could be sold, which is always less than what it would cost to replace it. Last is subrogation in insurance. Principle of subrogation is the legal substitution of one person in another's place. It is based on the theory that if a person must pay a debt for which another is liable, such payment should give the person a right to collect the debt from the liable person. So subrogation is mostly process where the insurer would step into the shoe of the insured. To summarize everything in my report, risk transfer is a risk management that involves transfer or future risk, where there are types of it in order to manage risk. And these are outsourcing, derivatives, contracts, and insurance.
Hi, my name is Fred. Today we will talk about the principle of adhesion. Personal contract. Insurance contract are personal contracts. Thus, insurance contract cannot be freely transferred to other parties. When the parties to an insurance contract reach an agreement, one of the points they agreed is to do business with each other. In this principle, one of the parties is being left with no choice except to adhere to the terms and conditions of the insurance prepared by the other party. The unequal knowledge and unequal bargaining power are perceived to give the insurer a significant advantage over the insured. Most states classify insurance as contracts of adhesion. It must be noted, however, that in this kind of contract, the ambiguity of the language of the contract will be construed in favor of the insured. Ubi rima fide contracts, the doctrine of the utmost good faith insurance. The contract of insurance is one of perfect good faith, not only on the part of the insured but also on the part of the insurer. The insurer is expected to be more faithful to this principle, considering that its dominant bargaining position carries with it a more stricter responsibility. The parties to the insurance contract are required to disclose conditions affecting the risk of which he is aware, or the material fact which the applicant knows and those which he ought to know. Ordinarily, stakeholders in the tourism industry include the investors, employees, customers, and suppliers. The modern theory, however, includes the community, government, and trade association in the concept of stakeholders. Next is the risk retention. As explained by Insurancepedia, the company would have to pay for the losses from the risk out of their own reserve fund should it decide to retain the issue. In this connection, the company should assure that they are financially capable in dealing with the retained risk. Companies would usually retain the risk if they would find it impractical to apply for insurance because of a relatively high amount of premium for such matter. Next is the collaboration with the stakeholders. Stakeholder is anybody who can affect or be affected by the strategy or project of an organization. These are the people who have the power to impact an organization or project. There are two classifications of stakeholder. First is the internal stakeholder and the second one is the external stakeholder. The stakeholders who have a directed relationship with the company such as employee, owner, and investor are considered as internal stakeholders. Those who do not have direct relationship but could be affected by the actions of the management are considered as external stakeholders. The local community, local government, tourists, and guests may be considered as external stakeholders based on the definition given. Stakeholders issues. Let's talk about stakeholders in tourism industry. It must be noted that the various stakeholders in the tourism industry have their own interests that are sometimes conflicting with each other. Private corporation. There are private corporations who would like to build theme parks. The local government unit must be consulted considering the significant impact it could give to the local economy should it be supported by them. Overall, proper management could manage these conflicting interests and expectations of their stakeholders successfully. With that issue, the risk managers must reconcile those differences or consider it in making the plan of action. Therefore, to avoid certain issues as part of the corporation, you must do a series of consultation with the people that might be affected, whether it is a positive or negative effect, so you would know what should be the perfect plan to be executed in the future. This should not be taken for granted the issue of its sustainability, particularly on the environmental side of what might be the effect if they do such. Therefore, the participation of the local government unit on the project must be openly discussed. Next is committees. The enumeration, but not limited to the government agencies and tourism sector, are expected to have participated in the committee. One is the Administration of Tourism Department. Two, the Police Authority. Third is security agencies, government bodies, transportation associations, hotel association, tour operators, tourism and travel representative, and consumer groups. Readings related to stakeholders in the tourism industry. Importance of cooperation and partnership being a stakeholder. The cooperation would enable the integration of tourism development through the endogeneity, complementarity, and embeddedness of the resources and the empowerment of the residents. The cooperation would enable the integration of tourism development through the endogeneity, complementarity, and embeddedness of the resources and the empowerment of the residents. So why is collaboration between stakeholders important? To develop a tourism product, to provide adequate information about the existing tourism activities. It is important to note that there is a need to create a committee that would address the significant aspect of risk management, which is the safety and security. The different types of business must work together considering the nature of tourism. If no information about the product will be provided, the desire to develop of tourism will not prosper.
Hello, I'm Joy. So another risk management applicable to the tourism industry is to provide training for the staff. So it is essential in the management of risks in the tourism and hospitality industries to provide training for the staff for them not to be caught unaware on the things that they have to do should event happen. So management should save lives and not abandon their posts of unavoidable circumstances. So the unavoidable circumstances may not happen in the management if they would give proper orientation and trainings to the staff who would deal directly with the guests, clientele, and other stakeholders in tourism and hospitality management. And this includes trainings as giving first aid, booking system, or food handling. Safety drill in the tourism industry is that staff and employees in the tourism industry must necessarily be equipped with skills and trainings in handling emergency cases. They should be active in participating in all the drills that initiated by their management. A safety drill is a concept or practice of preparing people for an emergency. It is done through simulation of the actual happening of uncertainty that may affect of the business like fire, earthquake, theft, terrorism, food poisoning, and others. So an example of drill that the management should practice is lockdown drill. This practice is done in anticipation of an intruder or criminal act within the vicinity. So the immediate lockdown will be given to all. During the process, the occupants present at the time of drill will have to go to a room and lock all doors and windows tight. And then occupants must wait until the issuance of clear signal. So for the next one is an earthquake drill. The drill is used as a way of preparation for the coming of an earthquake, where our country, Philippines, is prone to this event. To practice for the event, stop, drop, and cover is used during the drill. So for the next one is a first aid. To have knowledge about the way on how to give first aid treatment to the people working in the tourism industry is given the kind of an activities that their clientele or guests would like to deal with. So the advantages of giving first aid training is to know safety awareness of all employees working and could help the industry bring down the number of accidents concerning the activity. Next is that their knowledge about first aid could save lives as they could give immediate attention to the incidences of grave injuries and critical damages. And the third one is the employees would know the things that should be included in their first aid kits and the different ways of addressing the situations in an emergency. So some safety guidelines for travel agencies and tour operators is provided by the Icelandic Tourist Board and may have some significance to the Philippine setting. These guidelines were issued to increase safety in the variety of tours and excursions dealt by the authorized tour operators and travel agencies, as well as assisting operators. So first is an overland tours and excursions. So for an employee who undertakes to guide walking and excursions in highlands and wilderness regions must have substantial experience and knowledge of travel in such areas. It is understood that such areas or locations where waiting for specialist assistance would take 2 hours. This refers to medical assistance teams, rescue parties, and other responding or contingency groups who could assist in case of mishap or accident. Next is walking excursions in sparsely populated areas. So this is for an employee who undertakes to guide and walking excursions in sparsely populated areas must have sound knowledge and experience of travel in such surroundings. Specialized assistance would take 30 to 120 minutes, and this includes medical assistance, rescue parties, and other responding or contingency groups. So for the next one is walking excursions in densely populated areas. So an employee who undertakes to guide and walking excursions in densely populated areas must have substantial knowledge about the natures of the task. This area is to be understood in this context as an area demarcated by signposts which indicate a densely populated area, and structures and residential districts are placed close together compared to neighboring locations. So from what I have mentioned, it is essential that the employees must have knowledge and skills of the following. First is mountaineering for survival in the mountain regions. Second is course in tourism is also a welcome factor to improve the participants' skills in tourism and the ability to function in an outdoor environment. Third is navigation to give the participants instruction in map reading, the use of a compass, and primary use of a GPS equipment. And lastly, giving of first aid to be able to respond to accidents and illnesses when specific help is at distance or help cannot be summoned. So next is on tours and excursions by sea or rivers and lakes. Operators who are dealing with tourist excursions by the sea must assure that they have competitive people like a lifeguard who could attend to safety and security of the guests in the end of the peril. This is aside from assuring the seaworthiness and license of the vessel to operate and navigate. So tourism activities may include kayaking, diving, and sea swimming.
So next is on travel by air. A pilot who conducts tourist sightseeing flights must be fully qualified to perform this task, and the company must be licensed flight operators, as well as being an authorized tourist bureau or tour operator. So Sue and Carol have conducted a study about accidents pertinent to organized outdoor adventure activities which sparked debate about the educational nature of outdoor activities about risks. In that study, they have insisted on the need to increase the level of training and experience of leaders and specify higher competence requirements as among measures to control risks. Furthermore, the teachers and leaders of outdoor adventure activities will need to be aware of and keep abreast of new developments in equipment, technique, and instruction. So some of the adventure activities relevant to conduct of the research are caving, which involves underground exploration of natural caves and mines or quarries which no longer work. Second is climbing, which includes all climbing, traversing, abseiling, and scrambling activities except on purpose-built walls and towers. So next is trekking. It includes walking, running, pony trekking, mountain biking, skiing, and related activities when done in mountain country, which is remote, or land above 600 meters, or open land more than 30 minutes traveling time from nearest road or refuge. So lastly is water sports. It includes canoeing, rafting, sailing, and related activities when done in the sea, tidal waters, or larger placid inland waters. Boats propelled by oars, motor-propelled, or towed rafts are excluded. So, accidents may happen in every place, and we can stop an accident to happen, but we can prevent it.
Hi, I'm Sahara, and I will be discussing about the testing plan for risk management. Risk management process does not stop with the identification of a solution to a problem and training the staff for the execution of the plan should the event comes. It's because there is certain process until we get the right solution for the problem, and it depends on the situation. The risk management plan must be tested to determine its strengths and weaknesses to make sure that we can handle the risk and reduce losses. The risk management during test planning involves three essential stages: risk identification, risk impact analysis, and risk mitigation. Risk identification, or it is also called a collective activity, is a listing of all potential risks that might affect the full execution of the activities pertinent to the industry of tourism. Risk analysis comes next after all the risks are listed during the collective activity. It is where the collection activity or the risk identification and amount of loss that might arise will be weighted and determined accordingly. The probability and impact of the identified risk should be given corresponding values to high, medium, and low. If the risk acquire both high probability and impact, should be given priority given by others. Risk mitigation is a process of finding solution in anticipation of the problems that may arise in every situation. But these solutions of these problems might change based on the situation. And based on the table, there is already mitigation plan that already eliminate, manage, and reduce risk to an acceptable level. Next is provide transparent and honest crisis communication. It has been said that communication is vital to the success of crisis management initiatives of the tourism and hospitality industry, because the information are neutral and factual, and it is because the staff are trained enough to communicate appropriately with the customers. According to UNWTO, crisis communication is a crucial element of a good crisis management system. because it helps to limit the negative impact of a crisis by addressing the information needs of all industry stakeholders in efficient, timely, and responsible manner. Risk communication may be defined as the information exchange involving risk-related factors among the accessors, managers, consumers, and other interested parties. The primary goal of the risk communication is to give a meaningful, relevant, and accurate information that can be understood by the target audience. It may not be the perfect solution, but it helps to understand those differences. But by the help of the effective communication, it could facilitate a higher degree from all of the parties.
Hi, I'm Kathleen, and I will be discussing about the principles of risk communication. The first principle is knowing your audience. Who are the audience? By knowing who the audiences are is to know what language to use to convey correctly the kind of risk attendant to the particular activity. A risk manager should use simple language which can easily be understood by the one receiving the message and should not create confusion for the receiver to properly understand what is needed to be done. One should be attentive of the feelings and perspective of the ones to receive the message, otherwise, it could cause possible shock and panic. The second is credibility of the sources of information. With fake news rampant in different media platforms, it is not any more surprising for people to get wrong with regards to specific information. One needs to properly examine and identify if the source they had read from is true and correct. Risk managers have responsibility to be credible. They have to ensure that the information they post publicly is accurate and credible, otherwise it could create distrust and doubt to their loyal patrons. And all information given must be factual, supported by science and studies. The next is shared responsibility. Informing people and keeping them updated about risks is a responsibility not held accountable only to risk managers. It is a shared responsibility for all. Regulatory agencies of the government, both local and national, have the responsibility of its public awareness since the government is the ones to give directives during crisis situations like this pandemic that we are currently facing. The media also share a role in the communication of these risks, thus also holds responsibility. The last is transparency. Risk management processes will always become flawed over time. The openness and availability of these processes to be scrutinized and checked will more likely keep these processes accepted by the public. Exercising transparency of your risk reduction strategies can help your stakeholders make decisions better. In some related reading, Penny, among others, the 2011 conducted a study to examine language, information, and online marketing of Canadian medical tourism brokers' websites in light of such ethical concerns. It was found that medical tourists may be exposed to incomplete or misleading information about the risks involved with this practice. These shortcomings are matters of grave ethical concerns as they threaten the ability of patients to make informed decisions regarding their medical care. There are actions which we can take whenever communicating risks. First, appoint crisis communications team. Designate team members by area of responsibility and ensure regular meetings and communications to keep the departments updated. Next is to appoint spokesperson. Nominate a spokesperson for all media interaction who has good communication skill. Next is background material. Provide comprehensive background information and materials on crisis management team and host organization online. Do not be roundabout about it and do not limit your information. Next is develop messages. Draft outline messages in advance of a crisis. Once the crisis occurs, issue messages through a designated spokesperson, focusing on transparency and accuracy and avoiding speculation. Share messages with other stakeholders. The next is media access. Establish crisis channels of communication such as hotline to media office. Frequently schedule updates and access such as press conferences and releases. The next is victim care. Establish particular communications channel and designate a team to work with affected individuals or families. Establish procedures for providing assistance and chain for rapid approval at the highest level. Next is internal employees communication. Activate communication system with frequent updates to employees only through emails via internet and text messages. Next is website or Facebook. Activate dedicated crisis websites via designated webmasters and frequently update, including a prominent link to the regular website. Post updates on the Facebook page to keep the public aware and keep your media channels active and up to date. Next is cross-functional integration. All organizations in the team must be engaged in the decision making and at least have a daily exchange of information with the crisis communications team. Next is quantity and quality. Information gathering and fact finding must be swift and accurate and immediately channeled to crisis communications team through industry representatives. Lastly is monitoring. Measure media and public exposure hits and perception. Survey post-crisis at quarter, semi-annual, and annual intervals to assess results and develop recommendations for improvement. The last risk management applicable to the industry of tourism is the revival of business after the crisis. Ringbeck and PH have also emphasized the need to monitor the shifting trends in international customer origins and profiles. Aside from this, it would also be essential to examine existing destination marketing and tourism development planning in the context of the challenges of a more volatile microeconomic environment. Established destinations must need to pool their efforts on innovations, multi-stakeholders, cooperation, and flexibility if they are to respond successfully to the demand of emerging regions. While developing destinations should consider effective short-term turnaround strategies to strengthen their travel and tourism sectors and reestablish their attraction for the international traveler by focusing on long-term sector development and making sustainability a core of destination development and marketing. Accordingly, the hardest challenge after the crisis is the way in which the managers could change the people's perceptions. Badowska in 2015 has concluded that traditionally, the budget allocated for tourism products becomes vulnerable and can fluctuate in the periods of economic uncertainty, such as this pandemic. Experience, reasonable adjustments, and the help of the state can represent options and solutions in challenging times. Researchers showed that the higher are the spending for tourism promotions, the higher is the activity in the specific region. Not all the decisions made by managers were best to cut back on investments, on expenditures, lay off employees, and offering services of lower quality. Many variables change during a crisis, such as transportation, number of days or nights, money allocated for extra options or services. In conclusion, risk managers should properly be able to communicate risk directives through the different media platforms present in today's society, as we are on the age where information can be quickly relayed and spread. We must also exercise caution, as information can easily be tampered and the sources can easily change. Risk managers should also be able to make the proper decisions to help their establishments to recover from a loss like the pandemic we are currently facing globally.
Hi, I'm Fretchie Ann, and I'll be discussing about the behavior of the guest. So to start on, we all know that in every establishment, guests are very important because they are considered as the lifeblood of the hotel industry. If you ask why the hotel industry consider the guest as their primary responsibility, this is because without the guest being happy and contented by the services offered, the survival rate of the industry would surely go down. However, there are also instances where guests are a major source of threat to the profitability of the hotel, and these are somehow their behavior, which can really affect or ruin the reputation and image of the industry. So next to be discussed is all about the best practices for hotel customer service recovery. So first and foremost, as a hotel employee or staff, from the very moment the guests raise their complaints, deal with it quickly to avoid major problems with guests. There are also instances where guests having lack of manners. So the best solution for that is to reconcile with the guest right away to avoid conflict and might give feedback to the hotel. So when the guests are having complaints, make sure to deliver it to the right person to avoid misunderstanding and resolve the problem right away. So a hotel staff must build a full picture on guest preferences to know what are their likes and dislikes so that the hotel staff may deliver best customer service and be able to produce customer satisfaction. So next is hotel employee must keep monitoring the recovery cost all the time, which it can help them from recovering a business expenditure and won't face a big loss. The service recovery is also very important to cover up service failures, and this therefore won't interrupt customers' experience within the hotel premises. It is also significant to treat the guests with utmost respect that they would feel that they are at home and feel welcome. These practices would gladly help the hotel strengthen the relationship between the guest and the hotel. So the guest complaints must be heard the soonest hotel staff have received their complaints to ensure customer satisfaction all the time. Also, avoid waiting time towards guests. When we define waiting time, it is a system a person or object spends time waiting in line to complete a transaction or activity. For example, when a guest finally arrives at your hotel, having to wait to receive their room key is disheartening. So it's a must to practice and avoid waiting line within the guest to make sure that everything is good. Another form of having a good hotel customer service is through the use of friendly dashboards, and this could be beneficial for a hotel staff and the same as well to the guest in which it can access information that need urgent attention. So, by having these following practices, a hotel management can already save time, analyze, analyze current performance, and can make decisions for their hotel. It is also important in the hotel industry that the guest complaints must reach to the proper person to assure that complaints are correctly attended. And again, hotel management should give out the full preferences on their customers to deliver best quality of services and customer satisfaction all the time. So next is staffing. Staffing is also considered as one of the risks that the hospitality industry usually faces, as the quality services that the guests desire may only be given to them. So, these are some risks that may be encountered such as incorrect or inefficient performance of practice procedures, workplace bullying, theft, fraud, and etc. Considering the vitality of the role of hotel staff in achieving the goal of the industry to give quality service to the guests. So to avoid this problem, the hotel management must give staffs an appropriate training and provide them opportunity for growth and development. So to sum up, being aware to the behavior of guests and customer service recovery is vital in any hotel industry.
So, hi, I am Catherine. So to continue, we have here the liability of hotel in a personal injury claim. The hotel may be held liable in a lawsuit due to the negligence or carelessness of hotel employees. So at this point, yes, hotel may be held liable for their action of not taking care of their guests. Next is the liability may arise if it can be proved that the hotel management acted negligently. Yes, in some instances, the responsibilities may occur if it is proven that the hotel management is failed to take care of their guests. The negligence must be in the form of hotel breach of duty they owed to the guest who was injured on the premises. So next is duties of the hotel to the guest. These are the responsibilities that a hotel must do in order to protect their guests. First is inspect the hotel grounds and maintain the property in a reasonably safe condition. It includes the reparation of dangerous conditions and taking affirmative steps to protect guests from known or reasonably discoverable conditions. It is important to inspect all the places in the hotel to ensure the safety and security of the guests.
in order to avoid future problems. Maintain adequate lighting, a duty to keep steps dry and unobstructed, and a duty to repair hotel defects. Next is control insect infestation. One of the examples is the bed bugs, where it is very common because hotels have lots of rooms and lots of beds. In order not to spread it, they must take action quickly to get rid of the bed bugs from the bed by cleaning the beds, linens, curtains, and mattress. Next is maintain proper security to avoid theft and assaults on guests. Another is exercise reasonable care in hiring hotel staff. Train hotel pool staff to prevent injuries to guests. A very common duties and responsibilities of hotel. It's very obvious that it is important to train staff first to know what they should do to ensure guest safety. Maintain stairs and elevators. To prevent accidents, the hotel must maintain the stairs and elevator by checking it if there is any defect. Next is maintain locks on hotel rooms, which is very important thing to do, which is to protect guests from crimes such as murder, abduction, and health hazards from outsiders, and etc. There is also a duty to reasonably construct hotel steps or warn guests of unusual occasions. Hotel guests have won lawsuits in which a hotel has been found liable for negligent design and construction where the staircase was located in a long hallway. There was no warning or caution sign, and the guest's inability to exit the hotel resulted in injuries. To summarize everything, it talks about liability of hotel in a personal injury claim, duties and responsibilities of hotel to the guest.